All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. My name is Billy Dees. If you've never been here before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. Today, we have an interview for you. On the studio line with me is Zafra Lerman. A pleasure to have you. So glad you are here.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Good. Let me read just a brief blurb on her. Her new memoir is titled Human Rights and Peace, A Personal Odyssey. A behind-the-scenes look at her life's journey from war-torn Israel to the White House, from classrooms to conflict zones. Every story she tells is part of that mission to spread the message that science, when guided by compassion and courage, can truly change the world. That's quite the mission. One of the things that intrigued me about this interview is mixing science and diplomacy. That's not one that I hear every day. So let's talk a little bit about you first. Now, you're from Israel, is that correct?
Correct.
And you're now in Chicago.
It's Evanston, really. It's near Chicago.
Okay.
Evanston, Illinois. It's where Northwestern University is.
Okay, very good. So I can understand, being from Israel, you're automatically, I guess, put into the world of politics, because that's the nature of that part of the world.
Correct.
What drew you to science? What age did you decide, science is pretty interesting, and specifically chemistry? How did that journey go for you?
Oh, I decided I knew I'll be a scientist from a very, very young age. I was always, since the age of 2, asking questions that people not always could answer. For example, by the age of 2, I had neighbors that are identical twins, and I decided that I have an identical twin, because I loved the idea to have somebody like me. And I was sitting in front of the mirror persuading my identical twin to come and join me. And my parents said, you don't have an identical twin. And I said, so who's there? And they said, it's you. I said, what do you mean it's me? How am I there? And I would spend hours opening the door where the mirror was, closing, to try to figure out what is it that I'm here and I'm there. And then we had a small radio that was a box, and when the news came, it says Voice of America. Voice of Jerusalem. And I lived in the beginning in a small place called Nashir, then Haifa. But when I was 3 years old, I said, how can I be here and hear the voice of Jerusalem that is very far away? So this kind of questions I had since the age of 2. So for a very young age, I knew I will be a scientist, not a chemist. A chemist came much later. When I was in high school, I did not have the best chemistry teacher like most of the students till today. So it was not my favorite subject. But in Israel, there is another school between high school and college. It's called the Army, and this gives you a more perspective on what you want to do. And this is when I decided to go and study chemistry.
That's fantastic. That's very intriguing. I sometimes feel that I missed my calling. I was even as an amateur, I'm very much drawn to physics. I took college level physics when I was at school, did very well. Physics and chemistry are somewhat related. There's a lot of balancing equations and things like that. But once you get past that, there's some interesting stuff in there. And I really feel that the average person who's who, let's say, just wants to go to school to, learn, do business or whatever, they really do themselves a disservice by bypassing the sciences because they feel they're just hard classes and I don't need them. Can you speak a little bit about knowing a little bit about how the world around us works changes your perspective just in everyday life?
First, I think the importance of science, to me, it's the logical thinking and the critical thinking that you develop by taking the science classes. My students used to imitate me. They were all non-science majoring in music, art, dance, drama, animation, film, and they used to imitate me with my accent. The most important thing is critical thinking. They try to imitate my critical. But today, when I have very successful students in Hollywood and places like that, they always tell me it's not what we learned in any other class. It's the critical thinking that we learned in your classes that made us successful in the profession you're doing. So first, it's the way of thinking and critically thinking that is very important. But I used to tell my student even to just read an article in a regular newspaper. If you don't have any background in science, there are a lot of articles that you cannot understand. If it's talking about climate change, if it's talking about nuclear power plants, or we hear a lot that the Iranians are enriching uranium. Who is uranium? What is uranium? What does it mean they are enriching uranium? So even to listen, okay, they don't read newspaper today, but they listen to something on their on their instruments, and I'm sure that Iran and the enriching uranium appears. So if you don't have any idea what it is, then you are lost in the world. I usually say that science education is a human right.
Yeah.
It belongs to all, and this is the reason. And there is a big chapter in my book for that. That I developed a method to teach science through art, music, dance, drama, any way you want, and it became very successful with underprivileged students around the world and with a lot of non-science majors everywhere, because it suddenly was not somewhere out of the context. Because if you come to a chemistry class and the teacher starts, and now we'll learn the structure of the atom, everybody thinks,
Yes.
why is that important to me to know? I remember when I was young in a history class, I said, well, I'm interested in math, I'm doing high math, I'm doing that, whatever. What am I interested in, Cromwell or Napoleon? What do I care what they did? Only later on, I started realizing how history is important. But as a child, what is that important? I know what I'll be in life. I'll be a scientist, a mathematician. But why do I have to know it? So by making science relevant to the students, Chicago is surrounded by nuclear power plants. So I start my class by asking students to bring articles from the newspaper that related something to science. And usually they were about the nuclear power plant, something is there. So I would ask them, what is nuclear power plant? And suddenly would be silence. Silence. I say, how do we get the energy from nuclear power plant? No idea. So from the nuclear power plant, that I had to explain what it is, I went down to the structure of the atom and the nucleus and not
Hmm.
there, because by that stage it was already relevant to them. Why are they supposed to know it?
Yes.
So it's the way you teach science that really causes a lot of the students to turn away from that.
Yeah.
And there is nobody telling them it's really important for you.
Yes, that's a very interesting tactic. There's two facets that I want to cover. The first is you kind of mentioned the mixing of science and the arts to teach. I kind of want to where I want to go first. The second is science through diplomacy, because I think that's the one that's a little harder for me to understand. So let's start with the easy one first. You talk a lot about the arts, music, what have you, and you integrate that with the sciences to make it more enjoyable. How does that process work? Let's say, for example, somebody is studying music, and but they really don't like science class. How does that relationship tie together?
Okay, so I'll tell you that all these ideas and the method of teaching I developed because I was an excellent student to my students.
Hmm.
All what I knew how to teach, I learned from my own students.
Mm.
Why? Because I realized immediately I was at Cornell, I was at Northwestern, and then I came to Columbia College Chicago, that was mainly minorities. The majors were art and communication. And I realized that I cannot teach the same way. So I remember I tried to explain a reaction, and I realized the blank face on the faces of the student. And then one student that majored in dance raised her hand and said, "Can I show how I understand it?" And I said, "Sure." So she took few students, she assigned them to the different chemicals and choreographed it as a dance. And suddenly it was very clear to the students. And I said, this is interesting. I should see what she's doing and learn from her to teach this way. And this is how this developed. Then there was an art student that wanted to show something. We had a microscope that had a heater under that, and he wanted to show with the students. We had a solution that was red color, and then he put it on a slide on the microscope, and in front of your eyes, modern art paintings start coming, like different feathers that were in purple color with red in the middle. And what he tried to show, that when the water evaporated, then the different crystals showed up. But he showed it in such a beautiful way, because it was like a painting. And when I saw how the students are learning by themselves, then first it started by me telling them that I hated, hated to write test. I hated that in 1 hour I have to show all my knowledge, and maybe I don't feel well in this hour. And then
Mm.
if it's multiple choice test, I said, and I always used to tell them, we had a rabbi, his name was Hillel, and he said in Aramaic, he said, Al ta'aseh lechavcha kol desani alecha. Everything you hate to be done to you, never do it to your friends. So I
Mm.
used to tell my classes, because all of you are now my friends, I will never do to you anything I hated to be done to me. So I would try to explain, for example, the chemical bond. And the ionic bond, I explained. The ionic bond happens when I have to go a little bit into science.
No, go ahead. Right,
You
please.
will see it. The atom has three particles. It has a neutron that is neutral and it's in the nucleus. It has a proton that is positively charged and this is in the nucleus. And around it has electrons that are negatively charged. The number of the neutron, a proton and electron is equal, therefore the atom is neutral. But when you want to form table salt, that is sodium chloride, the atom that is called sodium gives an electron to the chlorine. So then sodium becomes negatively charged because he gave away it becomes positively charged because he gave away a negative charge. And the chlorine that got the negative charge became negative charge. Positive and negative, everybody knows they attract. So they attract, and this is how they form table salt. Table salt, when you put it in water, this ionic bond, what you call, breaks because the water is polar. So it breaks this bond. Theater students suddenly show me how they understood this concept of the structure of the atom and all the particles, but they wrote it like a love story between sodium and chlorine, exactly like Romeo and Juliet. They just changed the words there to fit the sodium and chlorine and added the explanation of the atom because they needed a different particle. And then they showed how sodium and chlorine got married. It gives her his electron like a kiss and they become husband and wife, but it's a tragedy because it's Shakespeare. So then the water comes, this was other student, and break the bond, and then they stood all of them with plaque and it says, learn to take every tragedy with a grain of, and the couple stood there with a grain of salt. And it's interesting because years later, I went to see a Shakespeare show, and the way the actor pronounced something, it sounded to me like I heard in this, because I showed this video thousands of times around the world. What can I tell you? People loved it. It's now on our YouTube. But he says to chlorine, I am sodium from the other side of the periodic table. But then I hear in the Shakespeare something that I didn't hear the word. It sounds exactly the intonation. I am sodium. So I looked at the program and sure it was the student. And
Oh,
it's years later, 15 years, so I came to him after that and I said, I knew it's you only from the way you pronounce that. And he said to me, oh my God, I forgot everything I learned in college. But the periodic table and the ionic bond, I will never forget because we wrote the script and we acted it.
oh, that is, yeah. That is so different. I can see how that works. Especially, from an actor's perspective, they get into character and all that stuff, and
Yeah,
they really,
it
yeah.
describes in my book. There is a big chapter on all that with examples of the different, like the Bond father that they did, like the Godfather, following. Then there is the depletion of the ozone layer, like they did, like Star Wars. And I don't like science fiction, so I've never
Mhm.
seen Star Wars. So I said, this is beautiful, this film. It's film student I did.
Yeah.
depict the ozone layer so beautiful. But just can you take out this character that I don't know why he belongs? There's this character there. And they said this is the most important part of the movie, Doc Vader or something like that. But I'd never seen the movie. I said, it's all beautiful if you take this character out. And they said, no, it's part of the movie.
Yeah.
But they explained all the ozone layer beautifully. But you ask about music, a music student, this was when we learned about the ozone. He wrote a whole song about the ozone layer, but he sang it, I have plenty of ozone in the music of I have plenty of nothing.
Oh, okay.
And it sounded so beautiful. And then he explained really all the depletion of the ozone layer. So in dance, the student did so much. Even homeless kids that study dance at night, and the dance teacher was my student. So I was the head of the Science Institute, so I and all my faculty would go at night to the dance studio and teach them science. There are pictures how I sit on the floor and the students all around me, and periodic table is in front of everybody on the floor, and on the floor we learn all that, and then they danced it. And I always showed videos of that in a conference, Golden Conference, it's called, on science visualization.
Mm-hmm.
And this conference was always in Oxford, but it was once in Mount Holyoke in the US. So the people said to me, can you raise the money and bring them to the conference so we'll see the real, not just the video? So I did. And these homeless kids suddenly fly to a conference with all the scientists, and they perform to them different concepts, how they visualize it through dance. And you see the whole audience that was lily white. There was not even one scientist not white in the audience, screaming, bravo, bravo, bravo.
Yes.
And it was an experience for both groups, but this we don't have time to discuss.
Yes. That's fantastic. Moving on to the part that I don't want to say I'm skeptical, but here's my view. When the space shot, when the United States landed on the moon, I think a lot of people were hopeful that when we saw the little blue ball, and we might look at our differences a little differently. The wars that we were engaged in might seem a little silly, and so on. But that did not happen. It didn't mean anything to anyone. And when I think about diplomacy today, so many countries are ingrained in various religions, which is always going to trump anything that you tell them about reality. 2 + 2 = 4, that's fine, but it don't mean anything because my God is the right one, right? So I'm very curious when it comes to integrating science and diplomacy and making us feel more apt to talk to one another. How does that work?
So let me explain to you. There is a lot of war even between the people that believe in the same God.
Yes, true.
Even people that practically are cousins of each other, because they are all children of Abraham. Abraham had 2 sons, Isaac, that the Jews came from, and Ishmael, that the Arabs came from. So it's cousins.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of wars there.
Mm-hmm.
So how is science and why is science? Science is international. Science does not see religion, doesn't see border, doesn't see language, doesn't see culture. it's science. And the people that work on that really do the same thing. And it doesn't matter which God they believe in, and it doesn't matter which language they talk. I always like to say that a chemist in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and a chemist in Bethlehem, the West Bank, can communicate very well their chemistry to each other without any language. They don't need the language. They can understand it. So science can overcome a lot of the barrier that regular diplomacy cannot overcome. Therefore, after September 11, I suggested to the American Chemical Society board that we organize a conference where we bring together scientists from all the Middle East countries, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, the Palestinian, everybody is there for 5 days with several Nobel laureates, and we will give them a platform that they will see what unites them rather than what separates them. They will have a platform where they will learn to stop demonizing the unknown other, because this is the nature of not knowing and demonizing, and a platform where they can form collaborations on issues that one country alone cannot solve. For example, water is a big issue in the Middle East, but nature and the environment don't see the lines that mainly the British put on the map. All artificial. So the water aqueduct underground, they go through several countries. They don't know to stop because somebody put a line on the map. And if you want to solve this problem, you have to work together. The same with air pollution. The countries are very close together. So if you try to clean your air and the wind comes, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
So you must work on all these issues together. And we wanted to provide a platform for that. And this what we tried to do. The first one was held in 2003. My idea was to have one and show to the world that we succeeded to bring these people from countries that are hostile to each other to spend almost a week together. I didn't know that after that the participants will demand more. And we had already 10 like that, and we are ready now with the 11th one. But the first one was in 2003. 2003 was the height of the Intifada. It was the Palestinian uprising that resulted in suicide bombs in every corner in Israel, in the restaurants and in buses and everywhere. A lot of people got killed and wounded and blind and lost limbs. It was a terrible period. And everybody said, what, you're not afraid to have this conference during this period? And I said, no, we have to bring the people together. The reason that it's called the Malta conferences is because the first one was held in Malta. Many more were held in Malta, but the first one was held in Malta. In one Malta, because in my mind, an island is safer than a mainland. I don't know why, but this is how I feel. In addition, to get to Malta in 2003 was very complicated. There were very few direct flights. People barely knew about Malta. People used to ask me, Malta, Yalta? Yeah, Malta, Yalta. It sounds the same. So you could fly direct from Frankfurt, Rome, and London probably. And it took a long time. It took for the Middle East, that it was a very short distance. It took a whole day to get to Malta. So my calculation was that no terrorist will spend a whole day to go and kill a lot of Muslims and few Jews. And this is why Malta was selected. And the point was that the idea of using the science as diplomacy was right, because during this, the first day, every country sat separately. There was almost no contact. And I tried to walk around and move people and all that. By the last day, saying goodbye, you would think that a family reunion and that people were with tears, hugging, kissing each other. Nobody cared anymore what country you are from. It was like one family because all were scientists. And now there are 700 people in the network. And remember, a lot of them are professors. They see hundreds of students every year. So the influence is much bigger than the people that participate. And my dream, as I say in the book, and interestingly enough, Nature magazine picked it up from my book to be the quote of the day. When they published their quote of the day, they published a quote from my book, where I said, in order to have the atom bomb, you need a critical mass of uranium or plutonium in order to have a chain reaction that will lead to the bomb. I said in my book that I want to create a critical mass of scientists that will start a chain reaction for peace. And this is what Nature picked as a quote of the day. And this is my dream, because when you see these people and you think, if I could have every year several conferences like that, there is no way that we wouldn't be able to achieve peace.
Yes.
And this is what I call science diplomacy, because there is diplomacy, but it's all through science. In addition, scientists, I tell them, have the responsibility to work towards peace, because without scientists, you would not have weapons of mass destruction. You need scientists for that too. So scientists have the responsibility to go against it and work for peace and for the betterment of humankind in this planet. In addition, not in the US. In the US, scientists don't have any status, but in all the other countries, scientists have a special status and very respected by the government and held by the government, because governments know that they need scientists for the bad thing. I always say science can prolong life, but science can cut life very short. And therefore, we should use our science to prolong life and peace. And this is why I feel that scientists have the status and the responsibility to deal with science diplomacy, using their science for diplomacy that will lead to peace.
Boy, that's a fantastic perspective. I'm going to say the name of the book one more time.
I can let you read it.
Okay, sure. Author is Zafra Lerman, Human Rights and Peace, A Personal Odyssey. This covers a lot of ground. This covers some actually things you may not even think of in terms of concepts. I mean, she covers the relationship of science and music, arts, so on. the integration of science and diplomacy, and I really like the fact that science is kind of like a universal language. They say the same thing about math specifically, but it's a way to communicate. Go ahead. You wanted to say something
We
there. I can
just
tell.
say that when we say science, we include usually math in
Oh,
there.
sure. Yes, I meant, but in terms of the quote, people
Oh,
usually go straight to
yes,
math because 2 + 2 = 4 everywhere. Although there's people that have been challenging that, and that's how I would want to wrap this up, just as a fun question, without getting political or anything like that. There is, when I was a young man, when I was, let's say, in grade school and high school, I don't think I ever met anybody ever that seriously believed that the earth was flat or that the sky was a firmament that you could not penetrate. And the idea that planets were moving and how gravity worked and all these other things were all part of a conspiracy to fool everyone. I never met anybody that would talk like that. Now there's a significant number of people who not only talk about the world being flat, but there were some real crazy notions. I'll put it that way. There's almost an anti-intellectualism in society today. Is there hope for us? Let me put it that way.
Most of the things that the young generation learn now is from social media.
Yeah.
And on social media, nobody checks if what you say has any basis. So you can put everything you want, and people believe in that. It's not only social media. Sadly, our media is biased.
Yes.
Even the New York Times, they will put a picture to make their point, but will not pick a picture that, and then they can apologize that it was a mistake. But they
They put the idea out there.
They put the idea because it fits it what the editor wanted to communicate. So this is where our problem is, that social media and even the media don't check the facts before they communicate to millions of people. And when you are young and your mind is young and your parents don't teach you or talk to you about a lot of things. So what you see on the social media, or for the adults, what they read in the New York Times, my God, I'm reading the New York Times. It's a big thing, but there is no questioning about, and this comes to the part that they don't have a science background with a critical thinking, because then you would question everything. This is what critical thinking is doing. So this is the result that we see now. And then if you have secretaries that try to push their theories or conspiracies and act on that vaccines should not be developed, and that people that again don't have a background to critically analyze it by themselves. They accept it. And this is where our problem is. Therefore, we cannot stop these people from telling us their conspiracies. But with education from a young age, we can stop the crowd to believe them or question them.
Yes. Or test it themselves. Yes.
Right. But not taking for granted because somebody put a tweet that is the truth.
Yes.
I think we are in very big trouble about that. Very
Yes.
big. trouble.
Yes, I totally agree. And like I said, the people that believe these things, they're not on the fringes anymore. So yes, I'm totally in step with that. Thank you so much. First of all, I want to say the name Zafra Lerman. You can Google her; she comes right up. I tried. But where can people find you online? Oh, do you have a website you would like people to visit?
I have a personal website that is zafralerman.com. The Malta conferences have a website that is maltaconferencesfoundation.com, and there it describes everything about the Malta conferences.
Wow.
So I have these two websites. And for the people that are interested in education and in the videos that students produced in dance and music and theater, we have a YouTube, and this appear under Lerman Institute for the Advancement of Science.
That is absolutely fantastic. Again, the book, Human Rights and Peace, A Personal Odyssey, Zafra Lerman, the author. Thank you so much. This was a delightful and educational conversation. Thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you. And
Awesome.
my book is on Amazon in paperback.
All right. Zafra Lerman, Human Rights and Peace, A Personal Odyssey, available now. And of course, these days, Amazon, the place to check it out. Thank you so much, Zafra, for being here. Pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening. Remember, you can find me real easy to find on social media at Billy D's on X, which at one time was Twitter. That's kind of like my social media home. The Billy D's podcast itself, we are on all the major podcast platforms. So do check us out. 10-year history with the podcast in its current form. A pleasure to have you listening. Thank you so much. And we will talk to you again very, very soon.
Listen to music or audiobooks on streaming devices such as Sonos or Amazon speakers? How about on your car sound system? If you use Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music on any of these systems, you can also listen to the Billy D's podcast the same way. Billy and his team go the extra mile to make sure our podcasts sound as good or better than anything on the radio. Listening to the Billy D's podcast has never been easier. You literally just have to ask.